For this installation video, we're going to remove the factory sights and install a set of aftermarket sights on a Glock 43 handgun. As you can see, we've already field stripped the gun. We have the slide clamped in a vise so that we can work on it. We're going to begin by using a hammer and a punch and drifting the factory rear sight out of the dovetail. Next, we're going to take the new rear sight and slide it into the dovetail. In this case, no fitting is going to be required. We can center the sight into the dovetail cut and just snug the set screws. It's important to note when you're tightening the set screws on this sight, very easy. We're actually going to depend on the locking compound as well as the screws to ensure that the sight stays in the dovetail. When, in this case, we're using gun scrubber, alcohol or brake cleaner would work as well. Ensure that the dovetail cut and the sight are clean and free of oil and dirt. We'll give that just a minute for everything to dry. Alright, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the sight into the dovetail. Center it up and just snug the set screws. And as I was saying, just snug. As you can see, thumb and forefinger, I feel the screw stop moving against the slide. I'm done. I don't need to tighten it any harder. Can now go in with the red thread locking compound and apply it at the top of the slide at the dovetail cut where the sight meets it. Drop down into the cut on each end of the sight, and again on the breech face side of the sight where it meets the top of the slide at the dovetail cut. We'll let that sit for a couple of minutes and we'll remove what does not creep in. Alright, we're going to go ahead and go in now and remove the thread locking compound that did not creep into the dovetail using some Q-tips. And we can now move on to the front sight. Okay, the front sight is held in place with the screw. We're going to use the supplied wrench that came with the aftermarket sights to remove the screw from the factory sight. And then we can remove the factory front sight itself. We'll take the aftermarket front sight. We're going to drop it into that cutout, make sure that it fits. As you can see, there's a little bit of play there. That's okay. It's just doing something that we have to be aware of when we go to do the final assembly. Since we know it all fits together, we can find a Q-tip and some gun scrubber. And clean all the mating surfaces. The top of the slide, where the sight's going to sit. I'm going to get kind of down in that cutout a little bit. We're also going to go in on the inside of the slide where the screw head's going to rest. And give that a wipe down to remove any dirt, debris, and grease. Oil, whatever. We're going to do the same thing on the new front sight. We're going to use a Q-tip soaked with a cleaning solvent. Like I said, we're using gun scrubber today. Rubbing alcohol or brake cleaner would work as well. Remove the oil from the bottom of the front sight, as well as the threads on the new front sight screw. Now that we've got everything degreased and it's had a moment for the degreasing agent to dry off, we're going to go ahead and apply some thread locker to the top of the slide. I want to make sure and get everywhere where that sight's going to sit, as well as get some down in the cutout where the tenon on the sight will go. We're also going to go ahead and put a drop on the threads of the new front sight retaining screw. Okay, we're going to place the sight into the cutout on the slide. We're going to go ahead and flip it over and get the screw started. From here, as I said earlier, when we test fit everything, the cutout in the slide is rather large compared to what the tenon is in this case. So we want to go in and visually center the front sight before we tighten the screw any further. Now that the front sight is centered and I'm satisfied with that, I'm going to hold it in place and snug the set screw just a little more. Now, as we've said before, the screw is very small, the threads are very small, very fine. So we don't need to crank on this too hard or we can actually shear the screw. We're going to use a thumb and a forefinger and just snug it. At that point, that's all we need to do. We'll let that set for a couple of minutes to allow that thread locker to do a little creeping and to begin to solidify in the joints, and then we'll wipe off the excessive thread locker. Now that we've had a couple of minutes for the thread locker to creep into the joints and to begin to start setting up inside the joints, we're going to go ahead and use a Q-tip to remove the excessive thread locker. Both from the outside of the slide as well as the inside where the screw head is. Now that all the excessive thread locking compound has been removed, the installation is complete, we're ready to reassemble the firearm and go to the range.